Hey folks, for a brief moment today, NVIDIA became the largest company in the world, basically, as a publicly traded company, eclipsing Microsoft. And we need to talk about, is this a bubble? Is there a correction on the future? My personal thoughts and watching what other people think based on value metrics is what I think we should be doing right now in this fascination of a stock you haven't been able to lose money on pretty much over the last year and a half. It is honestly staggering and jaw-dropping. I mean, year to date, this thing, it peaked 173% up. Every single month, this thing is up double digits. And only just now, I mean, I was sitting here watching this in real time after it eclipsed that $3.3 trillion market cap, surpassing Microsoft today, did it all of a sudden just start to tank. I don't know if this is a correctional period or a crash. I think earnings will continue to be a defining factor for NVIDIA. But what I want to point out is everything money. I try not to make as much fun as other YouTubers as I used to, but I always laughed at, for a guy that is a true value investor who was advocating to short, not advocating, but obviously he was shorting NVIDIA. And I just want to play a few clips from this from a year ago, and then we're going to look at from 6 months ago, and then from as recently as in the last week. But let's take a listen.
Became a huge part of our life. But if you're young and you don't remember those 2000 days, go Google all the dot-coms that went bust. Go Google all those tech companies that went bust. It's a huge number. And all we're saying is be cautious, because it's really, really hard to recover from a 99% drop in your investment.
And there's a lot of, applying here that this is a bubble. It could correct by 90%. Like, that is the narrative that they were pushing a year ago.
It's happened a lot. We've seen it happen from all these YouTube hypesters out there that have sat there and they bought the hype and they lost 95% of their money. Have our investments gone down? Absolutely. We've had a few go down quite considerably. But guess what? We're buying cash flowing businesses, and as their stock price goes down, we want to own more of them. That is the difference. But when you buy on hype, if a stock goes down, what are you buying? What are you doing now? If you don't know why you're owning, you're not going to know why you're selling, but you're only going to have fear. And our big goal here on this channel is the more you know, the more you understand, the less you will fear. That's very, very important in all investing. But fundamentally,
complete bullshit, by the way. Value investing means nothing. The more you know, the more complicated it's going to get, and the harder your investing decisions are going to be. Somebody asked me last week, do I sell any financial calculators or this or that? And I said they're fallacy. They don't actually predict anything into the future. Yeah, you can base all you want off the past, but it doesn't tell you where these companies are going. For example, right now in this video from a year ago, NVIDIA was worth $408 pre-split. It did a 10-for-1 split. And we're just going to skip to the end of this video because we just want to see what they consider to be fair value, right, during this period of NVIDIA. So let's just take a look real quick.
This is how overpriced NVIDIA is. Low price of 40. High assumptions was 240, middle assumptions was 101. Even at our highest assumptions, it made the price 240. So before you leave, I want to show you what assumptions had to happen on the high side to justify this price. Let's first decrease our desired return to 10%. There you go. You're buying it today for essentially a 10% return on the highest assumptions. It's at 428, the stock's at 411.
I'm not willing to make that bet on the highest assumptions.
That's the question.
Could you imagine?
Is your money so invaluable to you that you want to make a 10% return on very, very high assumptions? A high PE, a high growth rate, a high profit margin.
So what I want to do as well is I'm going to explain to you how this happened, because the high assumptions came in beyond leaps and bounds, and we're going to discuss how that happened. But right here, the stock was worth $428, and keep in mind there's been a 10-for-1 stock split since then, and this was a year ago. If we zoom out on that 1 year, which I think it was just over a year ago, so let's just take a look at a 5-year and just go back about a year, probably somewhere around 2023 into 2024. But if we picked before, well, they were showing a chart that was just above where the all-time high was, so maybe up here somewhere. The stock has gone up 238%. I mean, it has just gone absolutely parabolic since they've made this video, right? So let's look for their opinions, because they started to change a little bit 6 months later. But actually, just read the comments too. They're hilarious. I was thinking about shorting NVIDIA the last 2 days, but it seems too risky with these bullish, overhyped investors who have no problem with investing into a company that has a PE ratio of 217. They might even hype it up more. So dumb. NVIDIA is a solid company, but got wrapped up into the next hype train, happily took profit, and will basically buy it back when the hype subsides. This guy's never buying it back. I'm telling you that right now. So 6 months later, they adjusted their price targets, and they said, maybe on the high side, it could be $577. Well, we know that the company ran up to, I mean, 10 for 1 was like 1,300 right now. So 6 months ago, you over doubled your money still. And then even as of recently, 9 days ago, they made a video saying that here we are again, saying the high side, the low side could be 30, the high side should be 318. What ends up happening with value investors as they become more kerfuffled, they end up changing their value metrics, being like super modest to super extreme, because that's what happened. The super extreme did happen, right? So what you have to ask yourself about the companies, what caused the super extreme? How do we not predict this? Because value investors, they look back at past metrics of revenue growth and they think that's how a company grows into the future. Yeah, maybe for a traditional company like Procter & Gamble, but with pure disruption like companies do, like, you know, Microsoft is done with, like, even OpenAI, like pure disruption has exponential growth and can completely change the outcome of a business, which is why you can't look at an Excel spreadsheet and presume that's how it's going to be in perpetuity, or you would have got it horribly wrong like these guys did with NVIDIA that terribly misled their viewers, right? But unsurprisingly, big tech companies like Amazon, Meta Platform, Microsoft, and Alphabet are believed to be among NVIDIA's biggest consumers, making up roughly 40% of its revenue. Now, I really want to encapsulate this into, this is my bear thesis has been, I've never understood NVIDIA. I don't buy these kind of companies. Same with Palantir. You know, I love them. I think there's huge potential still in the future for them, and I just can't wrap my head around them, so I just won't buy them, right? Like, I get my exposure through the S&P. If it continues to do well, so will the S&P. If it continues to do bad, hopefully other companies will make up for some of that, you know, that lack of return and surpass it in market cap value, and I get a less diminished return if it is a bubble, right? And I've been on that advocate side that it is a bubble. I think NVIDIA's their entire future is based off these companies, and these companies do not want to be using NVIDIA as much as they are. And I'm going to prove that to you right now, right? First, you got to take a look at the numbers, right? NVIDIA's growth numbers have been just insane, and they're slowing down. I mean, at the scale of large numbers, they can't grow at a 262 year-over-year % clip like they have been based on Q1 of this year. I mean, the quarterly over quarter growth is slowing down a bit. We're still at huge excelled rates of double-digit, you know, quarter over quarter growth. It's insane, to be honest. It's still jaw-dropping, but it's slowly starting to reach that curve, right? So we're not going to see the numbers like we did, which means they have to start catching up to this really high price to earnings multiple, which right now they're trading at a PE, a forward PE anyways, expected based off guidance here of about 54, which for NVIDIA's growth rate is fairly reasonable. But if you're buying the stock today, you're presuming that you need that PE to get closer down to 20 to 30, I think, because over time you're going to see that curve continue to lackluster, you know, the growth that we are seeing. So there's a lot of hype in this company because big tech companies have been fueling the growth. So big tech companies, they post their marginal earnings, they take those earnings and they say, hey, we need chips. They take all that money and pile it into NVIDIA. That's what's happening here, right? It's not the end consumer that's driving the growth. End consumers have been struggling in this higher interest rate environment. We've seen it with Apple and Tesla products and any high valued products. So NVIDIA is completely scathed through that without getting a single rash or a single cut, primarily because big business says we need these things and we're buying them. Even though AI hasn't materialized into any real revenue in a very, you know, material way, which is why people are saying it's a bubble, right? Like, how much money can people keep pumping into NVIDIA without actually seeing a material return on the end result of the products? Because I think AI is the future, but like Bitcoin and crypto, like, it gets very overhyped too quickly. So what my big concern is here is because NVIDIA can't keep up with the demand of many of these big tech companies know they don't want to be paying NVIDIA these insane drug-like dealer costs, because an H100 chip and H200 costs upwards of $50,000 to $60,000. You can go check it out on eBay. These chips are insanely expensive. So it almost looks to be cheaper for companies like Meta, companies like Google, and all these big tech companies to just go to ASML, buy a $500 million machine and start producing their own chips. It would significantly reduce costs. And as somebody that is a shareholder in big tech companies, you have to imagine if you're the CEO sitting on the board paying hundreds of billions out to NVIDIA, you're like, is it the smartest idea to be giving them these high margins? And that's where my fear came in this year, because we're seeing Meta introduce their own AI chips. We're seeing Amazon introduce their own AI chips. We're seeing Google introducing their own AI chips, CPU, all this stuff. And people are just pretending like this isn't a problem for NVIDIA. Now, they're still purchasing the chips, but they're using their own production to make up for the slump that NVIDIA can't provide. But eventually what's going to happen is I wouldn't be surprised if they just start doing a larger portion of their own chips to kind of start cutting the cost of, you know, paying NVIDIA all this money. So this is one of my biggest fears with the company. Like I said, I could be wrong. The company could go up forever in perpetuity. I mean, it's likely. It's never happened before in the past, because what you end up seeing is something that happened to, say, like Micron, for example. You know, Micron only just now, since the dot-com bubble, has actually surpassed its all-time high. I think, yeah, what's the ticker there? MU. You know, these are kind of the examples that I feel like we're starting to live in. You know, we're getting to this place of just insane euphoria. And I mean, during the dot-com bubble, it's taken Micron almost 25 years to start breaking that all-time high, right? And, you know, that could very well be what's happening here. The revenue is going to keep up for a while, but you have to imagine that, you know, the big tech companies have full control over NVIDIA. And if they decide to turn that tap off at any time, NVIDIA is smoked. And NVIDIA has always been a volatile stock. It has been for the entire history of its business. You go back to the crypto boom, and the CEO, all that guy could talk about was crypto's the future, crypto's the big thing, everyone's buying these GPUs to mine crypto and Bitcoin, and then all of a sudden it crashed. And then Cathie Wood sold the bottoms, everything money was shorting it, and then boom, comes the next wave of chip purchasing from big tech, right? So I'll pass the question off to you. I'd love to know what you think about NVIDIA in that comment section below.